Very good evening and welcome. You're watching the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. An open network for digital commerce, or ONDC, launched by the government actually about a year ago, is now beginning to take the e-commerce industry by storm. ONDC, which works on an open-sourced methodology, is enabling small retailers and stores to sell their products or services directly to customers, and the most affected may be third-party food aggregators like Zomato and Swiggy. Now, let me just simply explain what this is. So right now, if you want to, for example, order a meal, you usually go to one of the apps available, and there's a duopoly right now between Swiggy and Zomato. They have their fixed charges and fees, and that's how much it will cost you. But ONDC, which is actually a government-run entity, gives you an alternative for this. It has its set of delivery partners. It's available in about 260 cities, and it has a set of apps which have come on board. Now, some people are saying that it becomes much cheaper. You've had people on social media giving you examples and comparisons and claiming that ordering food on ONDC is up to 60% cheaper than on other delivery apps. Now, it's just about starting to pick up. A big milestone which has been crossed is that this platform has now breached more than 10,000 orders in a day. But of course, it's still limited. It's not a full-fledged product or a full-fledged kind of alternative right now. It could turn out to be a game changer though. Let me first go across to my colleague Sharat Dubey, who's sharing more details on the ONDC phenomenon.
Well, yes, initial projects have started coming in for ONDC, and do remember the main buzzword is the price wars. Now, important thing is that the duopoly of Zomato as well as Swiggy might be challenged going ahead, and this is the government's new e-commerce delivery platform. And do remember that right now it's a beginning, so the government has actually given a kind of freebies coming in for the new customers to get onboarded, and this also allows the restaurants to sell food directly to the consumers. Now, this has led to price wars going ahead, and right now currently no charging of delivery fees has been maintained. Apart from this, there are certain apps where you can actually order from ONDC because it itself is not an app, but it is actually used on a network. And the important thing is this includes your Paytm, Magic Pin, Meesho and PhonePe, which are actually the important apps where you can actually onboard. Apart from this, there are deliveries also which would be done. And of course, these names include like Shadowfax, Dunzo and Loadshare. Apart from this, what are the experts stating about this new concept of ONDC? They have stated that this could turn out to be a very big disruptor in the food service delivery segment. And of course, this is because of the pricing and the profits. That would be something to be in focus on. But currently, it's expected to be a short-term price war. But now let's look at where the discounts are coming in, almost between 30 to 80%, and where we are getting most of the discounts. Of course, the big names such as McDonald's, WowMomo, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut are in focus, and mostly these are the QSR names which should be in focus. Apart from this, what NRAI has been stating, they have stated that there's an alternate channel is coming up and better commercials are coming. And of course, they have also stated, but the restaurants would be considering a long-term sustainability approach towards this. Now, we did a small channel check where we actually went across Zomato, Swiggy, as well as we ordered via ONDC, via Paytm, and we did see the price differentials happening. And of course, there is a difference of delivery time as well, and delivery surcharge impact is there, and we can see a stark difference coming in when these products are being shown. Of course, from Cake Zone also, we try to order a cupcake. Over there also, the price differential was there almost more than 50%, and also bigger brands such as Chai Point also, there was a stark difference coming in when it comes to the final bill payment.
All right, so what exactly is ONDC, and can it be a game changer? Can it scale up to that extent? To speak more on this, I'm joined first exclusively by Shireesh Joshi of ONDC, who's going to be breaking down what this means. Now remember, Mr. Joshi is a veteran in the retail space, and ONDC is supposed to be a non-profit right now. Shireesh Joshi, tell us why this is going to be different from other options out there. And let's start with the very basic. Why does the government need to get into this space?
So the government needed to get into this space to actually solve an issue. Back when the pandemic first hit, and at that time very little was known about the virus, when the vaccine would come, etc. And the only measures at that time the governments could take was to control its spread. And so when a lockdown of 1 billion people becomes inevitable, then automatically as a responsible government, you want to make sure that people have access to food and medicine and their essentials. So how do you enable a large population, widespread, be able to access food and medicine when a time when the physical contact has been blocked? And that was the genesis of creating a mechanism whereby without physical contact, people could have that access. That has what has led to this. And this is a problem that only a government will take on and solve. Now, the government has not created, and I think I heard some comments about government run and government funded, etc. So ONDC is actually a private sector company. The government has created the mandate, the government has created the purpose, but it runs like a private sector company. It's also a Section 8 company. It's a not-for-profit company. So it has the flexibility and the agility of a private sector company. It is able to harness talent of that nature. But the purpose is to ensure that we create a network whereby the length and breadth of the country is connected. So that's why the government is involved. What is different about it is that it's not a platform. All e-commerce as we know it, whether we are ordering food, whether we are buying household items, whether we're booking a taxi, whether we're buying medicine, doesn't matter what we are buying. There are a few factors that are a given because that's the only way e-commerce is known. First, everything is the closed platform. Buyer and seller have to be in that application, otherwise you cannot transact. There is no cross-platform activity. All of it takes place within. Also, because everything takes place within, years and years have gone in investing in making platforms bigger. And so in almost every sector, you end up having a couple of large players and everybody else becomes relatively insignificant. And that imbalance of a couple of large players also then creates imbalances in commercial terms. So that's basically what emerges as the practice. Now, what is different here is that there is no single platform. There is no single entity. We are creating an open network where everybody can join hands and all sellers and all buyers can get connected and transact with each other, regardless of which application they are on. We already have examples of this. So UPI is one example where when you want to send or receive money, the two parties can be using different applications. They can have accounts in different banks, but money seamlessly flows from bank account of one person to the bank account of the other person. Both parties don't need to use the same app. Both parties don't need to have a bank account in the same bank. So that's interoperability. The other aspect is separation of duties, right? The unbundling. Now, when one party has to do all the activities, then it also becomes a more expensive way of doing things, but also it creates restrictions because that one entity will create one model and it will try to make that one model very efficient and very successful, but it's not very flexible in adopting other models. When you reduce everything to its building blocks, then parts can be combined as needed and you can end up creating a model pretty much at will. So that's what is different, that in order to create the experience, you don't have one party doing everything. So now we have many applications. Today, 7-8 applications are live, bringing a pool of more than 100 million buyers to the network.
So let me understand this from the user perspective.
Right.
For them, how do they use this? So they download the ONDC app or they go to the ONDC website?
So there is no ONDC app. There is an ONDC website, but there is no ONDC app. So how do you use UPI? You don't download UPI. You download apps which are on the UPI protocol. And those apps will say, right, we enable UPI payment. So any app that has enabled UPI payment becomes a valid UPI payment application. It's not UPI itself. You don't directly log into UPI. So similarly, nobody will directly log into ONDC, but there are many applications that have now been registered with us and have completed all the testing. So there are registered buyer applications and registered seller applications. So a buyer will use a buyer applications to search, select, add to cart, make payments and shop. And a seller application will use a seller will use a seller application to upload their catalog, to update their inventory and manage orders. So that's basically how the system works.
Now, you compare it to UPI, Mr. Joshi. So I must ask you the question. In UPI, it was, I would say, not relatively easier, but it was possible to bring everyone on board because the parties are the banks, right? That's from where the transactions flow and they're under one regulator, the RBI. So it is relatively fewer players that you need to get on board. You're trying to apply this to the retail space. Lakhs and lakhs of restaurants, lakhs and lakhs, crores of retailers. Then you need the apps to come on board. I think you have 7, 8 more. There's no reason for the others to come on board to something that's a competition for them. So it's a very different kind of terrain that you're dealing with here when you compare it to what happened with the UPI.
It is very different. So UPI is a good example to illustrate one aspect of ONDC, which is the idea of unbundling interoperability, because UPI also has the same principles. But you're right, UPI is a very simpler service because first, the only item being sent is money and it is being sent digitally. So there's no physical delivery, and what is being sent is only an amount. There is no searching for different kinds of money and selecting a money based on rating of the seller, etc. Those factors don't come into play. They do in e-commerce. So e-commerce is much more complex, and you almost have to go use case by use case. So we've begun with the retail use case where there is a catalog, there is a fixed price, and the delivery is relatively manageable. So we have delivery services of both hyperlocal and intercity kind, and there is a fixed price. Now that construct enables many categories, and so all those categories have come live. So we have now fashion, apparel, electronics, agriculture, grocery, food and beverages. All these categories are live. Pharmaceuticals, OTC is live, electronics is live. So all these categories have come live. Of course, we have a few players, a few sellers in some. We have many more in others. So it's a case of use case by use case. So each time you go to a different business flow, you have to enable that use case. Right? And even the shopping behavior is not identical. When I'm searching to pay, I basically am either scanning a QR code or I'm entering a mobile number. Right? There is not much complication in the user interface. But in shopping, your user interface will vary based on what I'm doing. So if I'm trying to book a transportation, then I need to give my current location, give my destination location, and then the transportation provider will send me an option and how much time it will take for me to go, and in how much time the pickup service will come. Or if I'm buying clothes, then I have to give who I am. I'm a male, size XL, because then I will get clothes for male and I will get the sizes that I need. If I'm booking a hotel room, I need to give my check-in and check-out date. So each item or service we buy actually requires a different interface. So we have to build it one step at a time. It can't be the day we turn it on, everybody will be possible. So it is a longer journey.
Okay. So what works as of now? What can you do as of now on ONDC, which is cheaper? Because, at the end of the day, people watching this want to know whether they should make the effort to find apps that are, glued in or plugged into ONDC. What is in it for them? So what's the proposition for the average e-commerce user?
Yeah, so there are 2-3 things that are a proposition today, even though the network is very small. And of course, as the network grows, then there'll be more propositions that will come on the way. Today, what you can do is you can shop from neighborhood stores that are familiar to you. When we today shop on regular e-commerce platforms, many times we hit sellers we have never heard of, we don't even know. But now on ONDC, you will find sellers in your neighborhood, and there's maybe sellers you actually physically shop from. So that's the first part, which is we're able to bring trusted existing relationships onto the network. That is one thing that's different. The second thing that's different is now you do not need specialist apps for specialist things. So today, when you go on a holiday, you probably book your flight ticket on one application. You'll book a hotel room on a different application. When you're going to the airport, you're booking your taxi on a third application. Today, we go to different applications for different things, whereas ONDC allows you to do through a single application multiple activities. Now, while that is not live in its truest sense, but it's going to be possible very soon because we have mobility services. So auto and taxis are available. We have grocery and all the categories I mentioned. We also have agriculture and seeds and saplings. So on the network. That's the degree of flexibility. Now, all of these are in relatively small numbers. So today, the user proposition is really about being able to buy from people you're already familiar with or discover something new and interesting. So today, when I, for example, look for buying food, and when I enter my current PIN code, because it's showing me restaurants in the neighborhood, some restaurants I know, but there are many restaurants I didn't know, right? We can't obviously go through every gully, every street and see every restaurant. And so it's a great joy to discover something new, try something new and try something different. The try something new and discover something different, and that browsing pleasure is not available on existing food shopping applications. So these are the use cases that are available today. But as time goes by, new and new use cases will come along. And so we'll see more compelling reasons. But you also have to remember that of the total commercial activity in the country, only 6% is digital. 94% of the activity is non-digital. So in many cases, it's not even a comparison from not having access digital to now being able to access digitally for many.
Fair enough. But the rate at which digital access is growing is also phenomenal. I'm going to request you to stay on with us, Mr. Joshi, because we're adding more perspective and voices to what kind of an impact the ONDC system is going to have. Is it going to be the kind of game changer that UPI was? UPI has changed, for example, the way Indians are transacting. even for 3, 4, 5, 10 rupee items. Will ONDC have that kind of heft? K. Ganesh joining us now on the conversation. I'm also speaking with Sagar Daryani. He's VP of NRAI and CEO, founder of WowMomo. So that's the restaurant perspective, that's the startup perspective. And of course, we still have Mr. Joshi with us. Sagar, let me begin with your take. For restaurants who have been not on a war path, but definitely have had their share of hiccups with your aggregators, food aggregators, is ONDC a viable option? Does it cost you less?
No, definitely. I think the ONDC provides the restaurants with a level playing field, when it comes to aggregators. To be very candid with you, ONDC for the F&B industry is going to be leading towards the path to profitability. Now, I'll tell you how this works. To be very candid with you, the delivery business for majority of the restaurants in today's day and age, the unit economics are not viable. It's not profitable. By paying 18 to 25% of commission to aggregators, it is very, very difficult for restaurants to sustain themselves by only depending on the delivery business. Now, I'll tell you how this happens. Basically, the aggregators are charging the restaurants a very high commission, and then they also charge the customers the delivery fee. And then we hear of stories of aggregators also burning money. So in a way, no one is actually making money. Neither the restaurants winning, nor is the consumer winning, because they're paying a higher charge on delivery fee, and nor is the aggregator winning. I think ONDC is going to be that disruption, which is going to make the delivery business very much viable for the restaurateurs. Now, when we see when we hear of, discounts and pricing at the moment, I don't think that exactly is a healthy way to look at it with regards to ONDC, because a lot of this discount or lesser pricing that you see on platforms which are enabled via ONDC is a lot of cashback offered by these platforms. And, deep discounting or discount war is not a healthy war. For this industry to sustain, it has to make unit economic sense for everyone.
No, I agree, Sagar, but if you want people to switch to a new service, there has to be a sweetener. Right now, people are very used to using certain services. And I asked the same question to Mr. Joshi a few minutes ago. What is the proposition? What is the alternative proposition? Why should someone leave the apps that they're used to, know how to negotiate, have a feedback mechanism of...
It's going to become more cheaper for the consumer, because
exactly.
See, what will happen with ONDC, it's going to be cheaper for the restaurants also, because the restaurants are going to be charged between 2 to 4%, and then the restaurants use third-party service providers to do the last mile, which costs them 35 rupees or 25 rupees, which the restaurant can still bear. And in spite of bearing that 25 to 30 rupees and at a lower commission, it is much, much cheaper for the restaurant. It's cheaper for the consumer, because the consumer is not charged a delivery fee. What the aggregator is doing, they are charging the restaurateurs and the consumers. In that case, no one is winning. So it's going to be more cheaper for the consumer. The benefits are going to be passed on to the consumer, and that is where you see the benefit for the consumer and for the restaurant industry. Also, I'll tell you where ONDC could be a big disruption. So today, the aggregators have 20 to 30 million users, right? Now, how do you get new users? Now, social media has 467 million users. I think ONDC has the power to take penetration really deep and get new users for the fraternity and for the ecosystem at large. I think that is be the real key change for ONDC, along with making unit economics and commissions go lower.
Joshi, a question. So ONDC is going to be cheaper because you're a not-for-profit, right? Unlike the other players, you don't have to make profits, but you have to run your business and you have to grow it. So where is the money going to come from, Mr. Joshi? If you're not going to charge either the partners, as in the restaurants in this particular case, and the customers, so who's going to pay for that service?
Okay, so currently ONDC is not charging, but that's not to say ONDC will never charge. Right now, we are funded with our shareholder funds, and that's been sufficient to get us going and will keep us going for a while. And we may, if the need arises, get a second infusion. But longer term, from a sustainability, you're right. ONDC will charge something, but the principle is that we want to charge only that which is needed to cover our costs, and it should be so small that it will not deter even the small sellers from operating. Here's an example. If you're doing an internet business today, right? You take a URL domain name for running your business. What is the cost of maintaining one domain name, because that's your only internet cost, right? And then your internet service provider's data cost. What is that as a cost of your total business? Really nothing. So the cost of having an online presence is a very, very small, negligible fraction of your business. Same thing would happen with ONDC, that when we do charge, then it will be of a nature which is very small, because we want to make sure that there are lots of people who are there on the network, lots of transactions. So even if we charge a very, very small fraction of a percentage, it will cover our costs without hindering the transaction. That's the principle.
Okay, so let me get K. Ganesh into this. What is going to be the disruptive factor? Mr. Ganesh, this changes everything. This changes the business model. I mean, we're just talking about food delivery right now, but what Mr. Joshi has described is everything from booking a hotel to buying groceries to booking a cab to food delivery. I mean, once you have that platform in place, sky is the limit, and it's going to really shake up the Indian e-commerce market, in your view? K. Ganesh?
Yeah, firstly, I think it's a great initiative. I'm very happy that we have people, ONDC has come up and is democratizing e-commerce. Currently, the challenge is e-commerce is a very small fraction of the India's retail, whether it's anything between 4% to 6% is a number, unlike in other countries. So there is a massive opportunity. It's not getting realized because there are too many barriers for SMEs to do e-commerce. So set up the e-commerce value chain. The buyer is restricted to the Flipkart or BigBasket or Amazon app they are in. He misses out on many of the options. The seller misses out because he doesn't get the customers in other apps. If I'm on Flipkart, I'm not on Amazon, I don't get that. So there is enough space for ONDC kind of open, interoperable, democratized protocol to come in to actually do that. But having said that, I'm not sure whether really it will kill platforms like Zomato, Swiggy, Ola, Uber, and evolve really to be all dominant. It definitely is a threat. I'll tell you a couple of things I heard both the speakers talk about. I mean, one is to say on the positive side, what UPI did to Visa or MasterCard, ONDC will do e-commerce. Okay, right? Yes, UPI volumes are phenomenal. They have really disrupted this. But e-commerce, food delivery has lot of on-ground operational element, which UPI does not have. If it was a fully digital service, then it's a different matter. Here you're talking about multiple players and complexity. So I really wish that the way it was described, it happens and happens to be the nirvana for everybody. Swiggy and Zomato are not making money. They are not making margins. The delivery cost, the average order value, the commission, even at the usurious as per restaurant owners, 23 to 27%. Even with that, they don't make money. There is no money in the basic business model. If they were making hell of a lot of money, I can really understand this logic that with a Section 8 company charging only a small amount of money, I can come in, I can disaggregate multiple players, I can provide the platform with a Section 8 company and charge only a bit, and I will make more money for the seller, and I will pass on the part of the benefit to the consumer. But when the whole profit pool is small, when the thing is not there, I don't know how it's going to work. So I do have a concern.
Joshi,
but
to
I
respond to that very quickly.
I'm rooting for it to succeed. I want it to succeed.
Yeah.
But my challenge is simple.
Where are you going to succeed? Where massive players with deep pockets who've been splashing that money in acquisition for years have not really succeeded in making those kind of profits? That may not be your goal, but just delivering. Mr. Joshi, let Mr. Joshi respond to those points you've made. Yes.
So think about this, right? Let's take one entity which has 20 million buyers, and let's take another entity which has, say, 100,000 sellers. Right? Let's start from the sellers entity. Now, if there's an entity that has 100,000 sellers, in the old system, what would they do? They would create a platform, they will onboard these sellers, and they would spend a lot of money to acquire customers and keep spending to keep driving traffic through, right? So that's an additional cost. What would the seller entity do? The buyer entity do? Okay, you have a buyer pool. How can I create more services? And indeed, many companies have done that. So let's start now selling items. They will start onboarding sellers. That's an additional cost. So regardless of where it was a starting point, there was an additional cost being incurred, either of a seller entity trying to acquire customers, or for a customer entity to onboard sellers and create a mall of some kind. Now, what is ONDC doing? with no additional cost or very, very minimal cost, because the cost of writing a few lines of code is really not all that big. These two entities now have a handshake. So suddenly 100,000 sellers have 20 million buyers. You've taken cost of acquisition for both parties out of the system. Nobody's incurring that cost. So when nobody's incurring that cost, nobody has to earn that cost back.
Right.
And we forget the benefit of common infrastructure. I used to be in telecom, and I remember at one time where three major players said that, why are we building towers separately?
Yeah.
And they pooled resources and created a common tower company, because it's on the same tower, all electronics can sit. Now, imagine what if you told every airline that every airline has to build their own airport and their own security and their own everything. Even the few that make money will stop making money. But thank God we don't do that. So when you create a common infrastructure, you are actually reducing cost for everyone. One of the rages today is artificial intelligence, and people talk about ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT is an engine that has been fed information from where? From internet. All that information was free.
Yes.
Imagine the makers of ChatGPT had to buy that information.
You know, no, it's going to be a game changer. I don't know if telecom is the best example, because that sector has not had a good time, nor has aviation. But this is a different game. I have to wrap. I'm completely out of time. I'm completely out of time, Mr. Joshi, but I think we should pick this up. We should pick this up. We should revisit in another 6 months and see what's actually happened with ONDC. And maybe all of us come together. Right now, I have to take a break, but I want to thank all of you for joining us today.